racial discrimination against white people in South Africa. The first of many refugees to come to America arrived on yesterday. Tyrone Bowman live. It's time to talk about this. Is there really racial discrimination going on in South Africa, or is there something more sinister happening behind the scenes? There is a saying, and it goes like this, quote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Many times people want to forget about the past because it is very painful to deal with, and they don't want to believe that they could have been a part of such atrocities, such horrible acts that occurred in the history of mankind. Now, let me say from the onset that bigotry, racial discrimination, anti-Semitism coming from any group of people is wrong, no matter who is a part of it. It cannot be accepted, it cannot be endorsed, and it cannot become a part of the normal way of life. Having said that, today I'm going to start part one of a series that I'm going to be talking about racial discrimination, segregation in South Africa. Now, the information I'm about to share with you, it can be obtained. It's out there on the information highway. It's not hard to find. So let's go to some photos here that I want to show you. These are photos from South Africa during the days of apartheid. And you can clearly see who was being discriminated against. I have some more I'm going to be showing, so let me pull them up before I start actually. Give me a minute here before I continue. I have to go back to the beginning so I can really get them here. All right. Here's another photo. They can easily be accessed. This is in South Africa, something people want to forget about. No, we're not going to forget about it. We're going to talk about it. Because they want to pretend that the black people in South Africa and the black government is the one that is causing all these problems. Now look at this photo here. You see the late Nelson Mandela, who was a South African trained lawyer, who was arrested for standing up for his God-given rights. So how did it all begin? In everything in life, there is a beginning. So I'm going to be talking about negotiations to end apartheid in South Africa, how it became about, the background, the Convention for a Democratic South Africa, the breakdown of negotiations, how they occurred, the multi-party negotiating forum, the political transition. These are things that need to be talked about. Here in the United States of America, nobody wants to talk about the civil rights movement and the things that occurred, the atrocities that occurred here on American soil. These things really happen. This is not something pretentious. This is not something that's made up. This is not something that's superficial from a Disney movie. This is called reality. And it seems like they're brewing for a race war between black and white people here in America. But they're not going to get it. Because it's a more intelligent way to deal with things. How did apartheid come to a continent, as they called it during the colonial era, the dark continent? One that nobody wanted to be bothered with because, quote unquote, the darkies lived over there. But when they found out that they had the world's most natural resources and the most beautiful women on the planet, and the black, strong, muscular men. They thought about it. According to Wikipedia, apartheid was a system of racial discrimination and segregation by the South African government. It was formalized in 1948, forming a framework for political and economic dominance by the white population and severely restricting the political rights of the black majority, people who were born on African soil. Natives of Africa. These were people of the Dutch origin who migrated to Africa, but they wanted dominance over black people. That's why I hate those Tarzan movies and all that stereotypical garbage that racist Hollywood produced for over 100 years. How in the world is a white man going to rule a jungle of black people? Tarzan. Come on with that garbage. Between 1960 and 1990, the African National Congress and other mainly black opposition political organizations were banned. As the National Party cracked down on black opposition to apartheid, most leaders of ANC or the African National Congress and other opposition organizations were either killed, imprisoned, or went into exile. You know, notice they're called Afrikaners. The white people call themselves Afrikaners because they didn't want anything of a connotation that resembled African. So they called themselves Afrikaners or Afrikaners. However, increasing local and international pressure on the government, as well as the realization that apartheid could neither be maintained by force forever nor overthrown by the opposition without considerable suffering, eventually led both sides to the negotiating table. The Tripartite Accord, which brought an end to the South African border war in neighboring Angola and Namibia, created a window of opportunity to create the enabling conditions for a negotiated settlement recognized by Neil Bernard of the National Intelligence Service. There would have never been a need for, or Nelson Mandela, had apartheid and racial discrimination not existed in South Africa. There would have never been a need for a Winnie Mandela had racial discrimination and bigotry and hatred toward Africans never occurred in South Africa. Why is it that we are the most hated and despised people on the face of the earth, but we're the most gifted, the most intelligent, the most articulate people to walk the planet? And if Africa is such a garbage crap hole country, then why are all these people over there trying to rape Africa of its natural resources to populate and stimulate their own economy? This is not a joke. This is not a game. Basically, they're telling you what's going on and people are not paying attention. I'll do a special documentary about the American Indians after this one, Devil's Advocate. And people have to understand this is not a game, this is not a joke, this is real. Discrimination against any form of people is wrong. And the Republicans are blindly going along with any and everything because they believe that their self-imposed mandate of Project 2025 is the end all to be all, and everybody's supposed to bow down to it and not say anything against it. Billionaires want power. Billionaires want prestige. Billionaires want to control the lives of everything, everyone, and everybody. So apartheid was real. The millions of Africans who were slaughtered by King Leopold, the millions who were slaughtered by Hitler, Stalin, those tyrants, the butchers, the murderous hoodlums and thieves. Not, and let me get this in here, and this is going to piss black folk off, but I don't care. Our ancestors would have never been sold into slavery if greedy African kings had never negotiated with the colonizers to sell their own people into slavery. So you can't put all the blame on white people for slavery, because African leaders were complicit in it as well. Yes, I said it. They were complicit in it as well. The transatlantic slave voyages could have never have occurred without the cooperation of African leaders. So there's plenty of blame to go around. And in all fairness, let me just say this, because this is real. When Donald Trump first ran in 2016, he reached out to black people. In the Democratic Party, you have racism and bigotry in that party as well. It's well buried, it's knee deep, and you cover it up with glossy terms and things of that nature. So apartheid is real. Nelson Mandela, who became the first black president of South Africa, was the fulfillment. It could have been a prophecy, I don't know. I remember reading two books, one called The Long Walk Home. The Long Walk to Freedom. Check it out. It's a powerful must read about Nelson Mandela. And then there's a biography that I read entitled Nelson Mandela. I've also read Mein Kampf. Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf means my story. I'll see you, James. Mein Kampf means my story. I've read it from cover to cover and in between. Everything that Hitler did in Germany was legalized. And you know who it was backed up by? The so-called Christian right. The Christian church. They endorsed, they co-signed, they put him into power. Just like the Christian right here in America, known as evangelicals, so-called conservative evangelicals who are sitting back, watching all the carnage go on in this country. They aided and abetted, endorsed, co-signed. They took the money that was given to them. Oh, they got money. Those greedy preachers got paid because they love money. They love materialism. They love wealth at the expense of others. So don't give me that malarkey about Christianity being a religion that favors everyone, everything, and everybody. The late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, quote, "The most segregated hour in America is on Sunday," end quote. They opposed King. They blasphemed the God of heaven against King. They did not like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they threatened and intimidated and damned black folk to hell if they participated in the sit-ins and the civil rights movement. And those gospel singers who traveled up and down the roads and the highways for decades faced bigotry, racial discrimination of every kind under the sun. Apartheid, racial segregation in South Africa. The apartheid system in South Africa was ended through a series of bilateral and multi-party negotiations between 1990 and 1993. Who were they negotiating with? Nelson Mandela. Because South Africa was on the verge of a civil war. Because the Africans got tired of it. They got tired of it. The negotiations culminated in the passage of a new interim constitution in 1993, a precursor to the Constitution of 1996, and in South Africa's first non-racial elections in 1994, won by who? By the African National Congress, or the ANC, Liberation Movement. Although there had been gestures towards negotiations in the 1970s and 1980s, the process accelerated in 1990 when the government of F.W.D. Clerk. I like the way they try to smooth things over, so I'm breaking it down. Took a number of unilateral steps toward reform. No, he was forced to reform. He didn't take any steps. He was forced to reform, including releasing Mandela from prison and unbanning the ANC and other political organizations. He had no choice but to. You know how change comes about? You don't have to raise hell. You just have to stay in your ground and know who you are. And oftentimes I've said this to people, and I'll say it again. If you are not sitting at the table of negotiation as an equal, you don't have a voice. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. Quote, close quote. The poor can't help the poor. The broke can't help the broke. The depressed and the despised and the few cannot help each other. Moneyless people don't have power. Moneyless people cannot sit at the table where the billionaires are, because you are not on par with them. You can get the ear of any person if you have what it takes to get their ear. All human beings are human at the end of the day. I read every book that was quote unquote authored by Donald Trump. I read them all. I read every last one of them. I could run them all down to you, but I'm not going to. But I read them all. The question is there racial discrimination toward the white people who recently resettled from South Africa to America? The answer is no. They just don't like the fact that the government is being reorganized under South Africa's black president, Ramaphosa. Because Africans lost their land. It was taken during the apartheid era. They took it from them. And he banished them to a ghetto known as Soweto. Have you seen what Soweto looks like, even to this day? That ghetto, that rat roach infested hub of poverty, sickness and disease. Let me get back to reading some of this article. So the ANC was unbanned along with other organizations in 1990, 1991. Bilateral talks between the ANC and the government established the preconditions for substantive negotiations codified in the Groote Minute and Pretoria Minute, the first multi-party agreement of the desirability of a negotiated settlement was the 1991 National Peace Accord, consolidated later that year by the establishment of the Multi-Party Convention for Democratic South Africa, or CODESA. However, the second plenary session of CODESA in May 1992 encouraged stubborn deadlock over questions of regional autonomy, political and cultural self-determination, and the constitution-making process itself. The AFC returned to a program of mass action, hoping to leverage its popular support, only to withdraw from negotiations entirely in June 1992 after the Biopatong massacre. The massacre revived pre-existing and enduring concerns about state complicity in political violence, possibly through the use of a state-sponsored third force bent on destabilization. Instead, political violence was nearly continuous throughout the negotiations. White extremists and separatists launched periodic attacks, and there were regular clashes between the supporters of the ANC and supporters of the Inkatha Freedom Party, or the IFP. Let me just say this in closing out this for now. Stop begging people to be accepted by them. Stop trying to integrate where people don't want you to be integrated. I don't want to be a part of anything that doesn't want me. If you don't like me, fine. I don't like you. You don't want to be bothered with me? I don't want to be bothered with you. You know darn well deep down in your hearts, you don't love everybody. Don't even pretend to tell that pretentious lie. Nobody loves everybody. We can strive. It's hard to love your oppressor. It's hard to love poverty. It's hard to love things. And black folk, here's why I can't be a politician, because I got to get on y'all case too. Stop killing each other. Start handling your business and taking care of your own neighborhoods where you live. Stop calling each other derogatory terms and using the N-word and all this kind of foolishness. I grew up around Italian and Jewish people all my life, and I know some terms that they use among themselves I cannot say or I cannot use. They can say it amongst themselves, but I cannot, no matter how friendly I am with them. There's certain lines you just don't cross. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know about all the other things I'm going to be talking about, because I'm going to be talking about them. It's not a matter of just hating somebody because of the pigmentation of skin. Racism is an ideology. Segregation is an ideology. Apartheid is an ideology. It is a mindset before it turns into what it becomes physically. Build your own schools. Build your own hospitals. Build your own economy. People don't want to talk about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the great work that he did here in the United States of America of reforming, cleaning up black people, establishing financial independence. But it's true. Apartheid, racial discrimination and segregation in South Africa. Never surrender, never quit.